It was a cold, moonless night in the small town of Riverbend. I had just finished a long day at a fire safety conference, giving a dry keynote on advanced arson detection techniques, when my phone rang. I wasn't expecting much, maybe a few late-night calls from colleagues. But this one, the one that came through that night, would change everything. "Alex, it's bad. It's real bad," the voice on the other end crackled through the static. It was Chief Martinez, the local fire chief. "We've got a fire at the veterans shelter. Valor House. It's gone, Ramsey." I don't know what it was about his tone, but I could hear the strain, the panic buried in it. I grabbed my jacket, told my team to hold tight, and rushed to the scene. When I got there, the air was thick with smoke, and thick with something else. Something darker. It wasn't just the usual burnt wood smell. No, this was different. Something chemical. Something that didn't belong. I knew it in my gut. This wasn't an accident. The old building Valor House, a shelter for disabled veterans, was already halfway consumed by the flames. You could hear the crash of glass, the snap of burning beams. I could feel the heat, even from where I stood behind the barricade. I had seen plenty of fires in my years as a fire investigator, but this felt wrong. Too quick. Too deliberate. I pushed through the crowd, my eyes scanning the perimeter. Veterans, survivors of battles far worse than this, were huddled in blankets on the grass. They were watching their home burn to the ground. Some had seen too much fire, too much destruction already. The pain on their faces was one I knew all too well. But something about this fire, it made me angry, really angry. And I had to keep it in check. I'd been a fire investigator long enough to know what I was looking at. This wasn't just a careless spark. This was an orchestrated attack. As I walked past the command post, I spotted Dv the shelter manager. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. His hands were trembling, and I could hear the crack in his voice as he spoke. "Alex," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I think everyone's out. Frank's doing a head count, but it happened so fast. It just went up. Who could have done this?" I asked, though I already had a sinking feeling. The smell of accelerant in the air was unmistakable, and my instincts told me there was more to this fire than just bad wiring. Dv shook his head, his eyes welling with tears. "We had the inspection last month. They said the wiring was okay. We were trying to raise funds for upgrades." I glanced over at Frank Washington, a former Army sergeant who'd been a rock for these men and women. He was standing by a group of veterans, his face a mask of grim determination. Frank had been through 2 wars, and now here he was, watching the place he'd fought so hard to protect, burn to the ground. I knew, deep down, that this wasn't just some random incident. Someone wanted this place gone. Someone had made sure it didn't serve YVE. As the hours passed, we got more information. A handful of witnesses reported seeing a car, a black SUV, suspiciously parked near the shelter the night before the fire. No one knew who it was, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was no coincidence. It wasn't just a random person setting fire to a building. This was someone with motive. And the more I dug into the town's politics, the more I began to suspect who might be behind it. Brenda Hartford, the chairperson of the Riverbend Preservation Society, had been outspoken about Valor House for years. She'd called it an eyesore, a blight on the town. She'd been pushing for it to be moved out of Riverbend ever since it opened. Every time someone spoke about the veterans who lived there, Brenda would be quick to remind them about the negative impact it was having on property values. I'd seen her around town before, always so polished, so poised. But something about her rubbed me the wrong way. She didn't care about the veterans. She only cared about the aesthetic of Riverbend. The idea of these men and women, wounded in battle, living in her town, had clearly irked her to no end. And then came the reports that made my blood run cold. Brenda had been at the town council meeting just weeks ago, furiously fighting against the shelter. She'd lost, but she was furious. And now Valor House was burning. Coincidence? I wasn't buying it. I needed more evidence. I wasn't going to just throw accusations around without proof. But the more I dug, the more I found. The town was dead, sure, but there were whispers from those close to Brenda, saying she had a personal stake in getting rid of the shelter. She wanted it gone, by any means necessary. And when I dug into her finances, I found something suspicious. A purchase at a hardware store for industrial-grade accelerants, just days before the fire. I had my suspect. The confrontation was intense. I had to play my cards carefully. I met with Brenda at her pristine, multi-million-dollar mansion the morning after the fire. She answered the door herself, putting on her best concerned citizen face. It was almost too perfect. Her voice so measured, so full of false sympathy sent chills down my spine. "Chief Ramsey," she said, feigning shock. This is such a tragedy. How could something like this happen?" I didn't flinch. "I'm sure you're devastated, Miss Hartford," I said, my voice calm. "I just have a few questions about the fire. Were you in town last night?" Her eyes flickered for a moment. "I was at home, reading. It's been a quiet few days for me." "Interesting," I said, keeping my tone even. "You see, I have evaluated placing your vehicle near the shelter last night, right before the fire broke out. Funny how that works, huh?" Her composure cracked, just for a second, but it was enough. I knew I had her. "Now, Miss Hartford," I continued, leaning in slightly, "I know this is a tough time for you, but the evaluation doesn't lie. We found traces of gasoline and solvent at the scene. And guess who bought those supplies just days ago?" Her face paled, and the facade shattered, but she still tried to play it off. "Are you accusing me of this?" she sneered. "You've got no proof. It's all just—" "I've got more than enough, Brenda." I cut her off. "And I've got more coming." The next few days were a blur. I gathered the evaluation, talked to witnesses, and pieced together the puzzle. Brenda Hartford had orchestrated this. She'd paid someone to set the fire. She'd used her influence to keep anyone from looking too closely. But she underestimated one thing: the truth always finds a way to come out. I had her, and the moment I stood in that public forum, in front of the town of Riverbend, I laid it all out. I showed them the photos, the receipts, the footage of her SUV. I presented everything I had, and the whole town went silent. "Brenda Hartford," I said, my voice steady, "is the one who set this fire. She used this town's fear, its prejudice, to hide her true motive. She wanted Valor House gone, and she would do anything to make it happen." The gasp that went through the room was deafening. Brenda jumped to her feet, face red with anger. But I wasn't done. "We have a warrant for your arrest," I said, and with that, 2 federal agents stepped forward. The room erupted in chaos, but Brenda Hartford was no longer in control. The law had caught up with her. As I watched her get led away in handcuffs, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. But it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The battle for these veterans, these heroes, had just begun. I stood there, watching the community shift, the veterans who had lost so much now gaining a sense of justice. Valor House would rise again stronger, safer. But this time, it wouldn't just be a shelter. It would be a symbol of resilience. And as the sun set over Riverbend, I knew one thing for sure: justice had been served. But for some of us, the fight never truly ends. What do you think? Was justice truly served, or does it go deeper than we realize? Let me know in the comments.